We're inside black and gold. Steve Geller along with Jeff Nowak and fully entrenched in training camp. Much to get to. Obviously, the first day in pads hit Monday, and it was great to see real football in action. I know all the excitement about getting ready for training camp. It opens up, and then it's like guys running around still unpadded, and it's you know it's it's great to be there, but it's not as sexy or exciting as it is when we finally get in full pads.
No, yeah, today felt like the first real day of practice, right? Like the first day that we can
Full started,
actually,
right?
I mean, because we went through OTAs, we went through mini camp, we've seen so much that is not real football. And today felt like the first kind of bit of real football. So we're going to get into that. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. You can follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. You can get him at Steve Geller WWL. But we're going to be getting into observations basically from the first 5 days of practice and 1 day of padded practice, which is today. And then I want to get into in the second segment. I want to go deep into what Jimmy Graham talked about on Saturday, because I thought it was a fascinating interview where he kind of laid out a bunch of stuff that I didn't even realize over that have kind of been going on for him over the last 5-6 years since he was traded away. And I'm pretty sure this is the first time he's actually talked about it, which is fascinating to me because it was 8 years ago, but he just has not talked about it until arriving with the Saints. So I think it's worth spending an entire segment on that. And then in the last segment, I'd like to get into kind of what have we seen from Mike Thomas. He's going to be the biggest story this offseason, whether we like it or not. And he's going to be the slant guy, no matter whether you like it or not. I do like it because I don't know why people hate slants, because slants are fantastic. And we're going to get into that. He caught a bunch from today. But first things first, let's get into some observations, happenings. Since we recorded our last podcast, it happened on the second or third day of practice. We haven't talked about it yet. Trey Turner went down with a quad injury. Dennis Allen said today that it was a tendon rupture of some kind. Sounds miserable. You know, you hate it for him. He just went on IR today to free up a roster spot. I guess that's a positive thing for him in terms of, you know, they're keeping him around and maybe they can bring him back next year. I don't know, but he's done, and that's a bummer because I think that they really liked that competition at the guard spot. And I think he had a chance to unseat Andres Pete for that job. I really do. And what we saw today was Andres Pete goes out with a quad injury of his own.
But
It's not as significant, obviously, as what Trey Turner dealt with, but we don't know exactly what he's dealing with. We saw him kind of lumbering off during practice today. He did not get into any of the team drills. And so that guard spot, I think you have James Hurst and Cesar Ruiz kind of in line to take over, but I don't know. It's kind of up in the air.
yeah, with the development today, obviously with Pete leaving early, we're gonna have to wait and see how long he's gonna be out for now. But I'm imagining you're looking on the free agent market once again after unfortunately Trey Turner didn't work out. But yeah, I thought he had a really good chance. The history of the player, him being back home, you thought he'd be, a little rejuvenated too, like you hear from all these guys that get to come back to New Orleans who are from here. And so it just leaves you another big question mark at the offensive line spot again, when it looked like there was a little bit of answers for you. I'm not saying that Trey Turner was going to be the be all end all, but I thought he was going to end up being a key rotational piece for this team. Pete leaving today, I guess it's really no surprises. It's except for the fact that it was so early on in practice, the team really hadn't even done much yet. And I saw he was walking back to the locker room. We know his injury history is always a problem. Unfortunately, the thing you have to, I guess, hope for right now, just for the continuity of this starting offensive line, is the fact that it doesn't keep him out long and he's able to go week one. But we don't know the severity of this quote unquote calf strain right now, is like what DA called it.
Yeah, and like you said, I just have no faith in Andres Pete from a health perspective. I actually think that when he's been healthy, he's been serviceable. He gets a lot of flack, but he's been fine when he's on the field. The problem is he has not been on the field, and I just don't know how you can go into this season trusting that to be the case. I think that's why you brought in Trey Turner to begin with. And I don't know, who do you bring in? They re-signed Coda Martin, a guy who I'm going to be honest, I didn't even realize wasn't on the roster. I thought because he was on the roster through minicamp, and then I guess they waived him. He's not a guy who's going to make an impact, right? He spent a couple years on the Arizona Cardinals, and he spent the offseason here. He's a guy they know. It's kind of like they were like, well, we need bodies, so we might as well just bring him in because we know him. He's not the answer at guard. Calvin Throckmorton is not the answer at guard. Hopefully Nick Saldiveri can do something early in his career, but it's tough to say. The other signing that is worth mentioning, Kyle Phillips, the Saints brought him in. He was wearing 91 today. He was out there, but I don't think he was fully practicing. He's kind of just going through drills off to the side. He's wearing number 91, which is the number that Jabari Zuniga had been wearing. But he has retired from the NFL at age 25. Never really was able to latch on. He was a third-round draft pick in 2020. It's kind of crazy to think about. And he was another Jets guy. You know, the Saints, for whatever reason, have been enjoying Jets guys. Kyle Phillips is another Jets player. Nathan Shepard is a Jets player. Marcus May was a Jets player. I don't know what it is about the Jets system, but the Saints seem to really like bringing in defenders from the Jets organization.
Yeah, the big one too, Demario Davis, obviously. I think he was drafted by the Jets, right?
I think he was drafted by the Browns.
Okay, then went to the Jets.
Yeah, actually, I may have that backward. I think he was with the Jets, went to the Browns, went back to the Jets, and then the Saints signed him. Either way, that's a good note. He another former Jet player, although it was a different regime, right?
Sure.
Like the others have all come kind of out of the same system. But it's good. It's a good note.
Even too, I'll even go dig back a little further just because it's on my brain with Jets. Jonathan Vilma, obviously too. So yeah, they've had some pretty good history of former Jets players.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe they just feel like the cold toughens you up and you just bring them down. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't really know anything about Kyle Phillips. They just announced that signing today, so we'll see him out at practice tomorrow, and you'll go from there. But you know, Jabari Zuniga was not exactly gonna blow the doors off anybody. They clearly liked him. They brought him back, but yeah. So that's really the only roster moves that we've seen.
You said though, too wild to think that was just a couple years ago. This guy was not even a late round pick. That third round pick. That's a significant investment from a team right there.
I think we're going to go back to that 2020 draft and find a lot of examples of.
Yeah.
You know, because I think there was a lot of shots in the dark in that draft. Zach Bond was in that draft as a third round draft pick as well. And, you know, we talked to him today and he was still talking about how he needs to refine his coverage skills. I'm like, dude, you're in year 4. Like, I appreciate that you're being optimistic and you're like, okay, you know, there's stuff that I wasn't perfect at coming out of college. I'm still working, but no, you should have it by now. You should say, I'm good here. Like, I have done the work and now I'm ready to show it. What do you mean you're still refining your technique? When is it going to be refined? Anyway, I do not have faith in Zach Bond either.
I was going to say, check him off, the next guy behind Demario and Pete Warner then.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's another thing. But you know, we're gonna keep going. What I will say, and I had someone talk to me about, oh well, same old Saints, constantly dealing with health and injuries and stuff. I actually think, knock on wood, they are very healthy right now. Everyone was at practice today. They had 100% attendance at practice, not including Trey Turner, who is obviously going on IR. But you know, that's impressive. Like, that's unusual. So in that vein, obviously the Trey Turner injury is disappointing, but in the sense of the guy you signed off the street, who you didn't even think was going to be a factor until last Monday, is the only guy you're dealing with a significant injury with right now. I feel like, you know, when you take a step back and you appreciate where things were last year with Mike Thomas and Pete Werner and all this, and Trevor Penning dealing with the injury late in the preseason, you know, to now where Trevor Penning is there, he's still kind of getting worked in slowly, kind of get that 2 reps with first team, and then they swap him out. You know, I can't complain about how the health is stacking up, and I think there's a point where you have to say the training staff seems to have turned a corner.
Yeah, and I mean,
and Pete is Pete, right? Pete is
right.
Pete
You're going to have your guys that, I mean, it's an elbow, it's a thumb, it's a pectoral, it's an ankle. I mean, unfortunately, yeah, the guy just, it's constantly something with Andrus Peat. And just with the injury front, I mean, you see that across the NFL. This is a hard game, folks. I mean, it's not just New Orleans that is quote unquote snake bitten by these injuries. And I got to stop saying that quote unquote, I realize too. Now I'm using that one too much. You besides my other ticks, I feel I've realized that's one of them. But
That's
anyway, the thing with the injuries, they're going to happen right now, and I agree with you. Thankfully, this team is relatively healthy. You got some guys, obviously, like
I mean, it could change. But right now, like there's
right
this idea
now,
that's
yes.
like, wow, they're just constantly getting all these injuries. But right now, they're in good shape.
No, like you said, 100% attendance the day before Pete went off. Other than that, yeah, we've seen them taking it slow with your Michael Thomas, your Trevor Pennings, and for good cause. You don't want to rush anything when there's no reason to right now.
I can't remember the last time I was taking attendance at practice and ended up crossing off every name.
Right.
Which obviously not Trey Turner, but he is only on that roster because they hadn't moved him to IR yet. But every single name on that list was on the field. And
yeah,
that does not happen very often.
Turner's now on IR, so we won't have to worry about even scratching him off anymore.
Ideally, and tomorrow I'm sure Pete won't be there, so whatever. But either way, like I think that narrative is kind of missing right now the point that they're in good. Like, look at what happened to the Bengals. Look at Joe Burrow. Like, one major injury like that, and the Saints obviously have a long way to go. We should not count our chickens, but it's still, right now I'm okay with it. Kind of moving on slightly to something that happened today that we don't get to see as much of anymore. The Saints have kind of dialed back how much they go to this. Is we saw one-on-one reps with the wide receivers and the defensive backs. We don't get to record it anymore, which annoys the hell out of me because it becomes really difficult to kind of analyze everything that happened. You can really just make a quick note and move on because the reps go right one after another. You barely have enough time to write down and scribble what happened before you move on. But it is really engaging. It's really fun. It's probably one of the more fun drills you get to watch because you can really just hone in on what's going on with these two guys. That said, I get annoyed when people ask me constantly, oh, who threw the pass? Who threw the pass? One-on-one reps between defensive backs and wide receivers, and the same is true of linebackers and tight ends. It is not a quarterback drill. It's really not. Think of it more like batting practice. Like, if you're watching batting practice, you don't say like, oh, who's throwing the pitches? No, because the pitches are just going to a spot. Like the balls, like the quarterback's standing there with no pass rush. The ball has to come out. And that's what I talked to Isaac Yadam today, who had a really good rep against A.T. Perry. It was a really well contested play. A.T. went up, made a nice catch, the first true contested catch I've seen him make. And one of the things he said that I think is relevant, it's like it's actually really helpful for DBs because if you play perfect coverage on a team rep, the ball's not coming to you 95% of the time. Like maybe it does come out anyway, and the quarterback just gives them a 50-50 ball. But in most cases, it's like you don't get to work on your ball skills if you're playing really good defense as a defensive back. In one-on-ones, the ball is coming out. So you get to work on those ball skills. And I just thought that was interesting because like Marshawn, he really doesn't get thrown at, right? Like he doesn't get a chance to work on it. So that's where those reps are valuable. And I think a lot of people kind of miss the point of it, which is those are DB reps first and foremost. The wide receivers obviously get a chance to work on some of their one-on-one route running skills, but that is primarily a drill for the defense to work on those skills.
And it's slanted heavily, I would say, in favor of the offense.
Oh, and right. That's why it's a defensive drill because they are in a terrible position. That's probably why they stopped letting us record them because the DBs got annoyed watching all these clips of them getting burnt.
Yeah. That was not the case, though, for Paulson Adebo today.
No, Paulson looked great. And, I keep saying, and we'll get more into the position battle as we go. I like Paulson Adebo. I think when you put him across from Marshawn and you give him help over the top, I think he's going to be a very good player. And he's very physical. And you see him going up against Mike Thomas. That is appointment viewing in terms of what he is able to do and what Mike wants to do, which is just to beat you up off the ball. That first rep, I know Paulson intercepted it. I didn't see it because they started and I was looking at the opposite side of the field. And by the time I got over there, all I could hear was the yell and celebration. But I know he intercepted that ball. I think Derek Carr threw it. There you go. And then later, Mike Thomas got him back with another really well contested play. He just went up and made the catch, and it's what you want to see because Mike Thomas isn't going to be creating a ton of separation. He needs to be able to make those contested catches, and he did. But yeah, I thought Paulson looked great today.
Yeah, I know he had a forced incompletion against Taysom, and I think Shaheed, which were really nice. I'm looking forward to seeing more of these battles because you want to see that separation. Who is going to be that dude? Is it going to be Paulson, or is it going to be Alontae Taylor that ends up being your starter across from Marshawn? But I'm wondering are you going to see a rotation come during the season? Is it going to be a mix of both of those guys in and out? I just don't know how much that ruins someone's rhythm in the course of a game.
Yeah, that's a good question. Before we go on, here is what Dennis Allen had to say when I asked him about kind of the point of these 1v1 routes.
Well, look, the most important thing in that situation, because that drill is really slanted towards the offense. There's some drills that are slanted towards the defense. That particular drill is a little bit slanted more towards the offense. And so really it's an opportunity for guys to really focus in on, concentrate on working their technique. And if you work proper technique in that drill and have success there, that'll bode well as you get into full team situations where now there's a rush on the quarterback.
But yeah, right. Like you're not necessarily expected to win those reps if you're a DB. I mean, think about it. How many Saints defensive backs would you be like, yeah, put him on an island, we trust him? One. And it's Marshawn Lattimore. And even he, in those situations, is going to have a hard time. So, like, you're talking about a guy like Isaac Yiadom, who tells me he likes those reps. He didn't like him when he was a young player, but he likes him now because he gets to be more physical. He gets to really hone in on his techniques. That rep against A.T. Perry, he said he knew why he lost it before he lost it. And it was because he was kind of dancing at the line. He wasn't getting his feet set. And then he just kind of got beat off the ball and it was over. And that's the type of thing that's like, yeah, it's annoying if you're a defensive back and you're getting beat and you feel like you're playing good coverage. But it's where it's kind of that like sink or swim situation. And I think there's value in that. The other thing DA said that I think is interesting, there were no 7-on-7 reps today. And because of that, there were no one-on-one defensive line, offensive line drills, because that's when they would be doing those, is when the offense and the linebackers are doing the 7-on-7s with no lines. They're over there doing their one-on-one. So I just thought that, and I never see it because I'm always watching the 7-on-7s. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting because it's a good point. I never thought about that.
No, that's always something too that seems like it's a must appointment viewing, and we just didn't get that today.
Yeah, well, it's just, and that's another thing is like I can give you all these notes on practice. Understand that is physically impossible for me to watch everything. Like I kind of have to just take turns. One of these days I'll have to skip 7-on-7s and go over and watch the one-on-one offensive line, defensive line drills. But it's just there's only so much you can do, and we can only stand in certain areas, and they don't let us kind of hide them in the corner.
Yeah, that's the toughest part too, is trying to get a good angle for those one-on-ones with the offensive and defensive linemen.
I agree. One more note before we move on to the next segment is Jeff Duncan reported this over the weekend. Dennis Allen confirmed it. Alvin Kamara is going to be meeting with Roger Goodell. The idea being he's going to kind of tell him his side of the story as it pertains to the Las Vegas nightclub incident that has been settled criminally. And now the question just remains of, okay, what's the discipline going to be? And, I have no idea whether anything Alvin has to say will sway Roger or anybody in that regard, but it's probably not a terrible idea. It's kind of a why not? It couldn't hurt, I imagine. I hope it couldn't hurt. I don't know if it could actually, now that I say that. But here is what Dennis Allen had to say when he was asked about, how that all developed.
I think that was a discussion that initially started with him and Mickey. I think Alvin really wants to, get out ahead of this and have a chance to visit with Roger and kind of give him his side of the story. And look, at the end of the day, I think part of it is, let's get some resolution to where we're at, and then let's move forward. So I think Alvin, is looking forward to putting this behind him and focusing in on what he has to do to be the best he can for our team this season.
So apparently that was a conversation that Alvin had with Mickey, and they kind of just got it going. He indicated to Jeff Duncan that it was going to be happening prior to August 2nd, which would be Wednesday. So I don't know if maybe they would do it over Zoom, maybe they would do it here, or maybe if Alvin's not here tomorrow, we know why. But either way, it's going to be, I think if they're going to levy discipline quickly, I imagine it won't come too long after that meeting. And we haven't talked to Alvin yet. He said he's going to talk to us after that happens. So I don't know. Either way, it's going to be a huge story when it drops. But at least we could feel safe that we won't be getting the discipline until that conversation happens.
Yeah, we have an off day this week on Thursday, so maybe that's even when they do some kind of meeting. I'm curious too. Now that you mentioned, it's like, I think you want to meet somebody. I'm like, wow, is Alvin going to fly to New York or something? But yeah, we have Zoom calls nowadays, and you don't need to be face to face kind of thing. Although it's an issue, I wonder if he'd want to have like that in-person meeting and sit down with the commissioner. And
if you're trying to get some positive feels and like you're trying to win somebody over, being in person would be helpful, I think.
Yeah.
Because I've been on enough Zoom calls, and I personally find no issue whatsoever in being a bitch over Zoom. I'm a bitch to people over Zoom all the time. But when I see them in person, I'm like, oh, how you doing?
Hey.
You're a human just like me. You don't live in that computer screen. And so I don't know. That's my personal vibe. If I'm Alvin and I'm trying to kind of massage the skids here a little bit, I know that's a mixed reference, but stay with me. I would be flying out there. Because you can say, oh, how much does it cost to fly out there? It'll cost a heck of a lot less than missing 2 games would. And losing 2 game checks. So if he can get that suspension down from like 6 games to 4 games with a conversation and getting on the right side of the commissioner, why not?
Yeah, that's the last thing to worry about. It's obviously, does the commish have the time and is willing to have this sit down, which I'm sure he will. Hopefully Alvin brings him a nice present from New Orleans that softens the commish up even more and be like, remember, Sean Payton's not here anymore. You don't have to hate us.
I was just about to say, you should go over there and be like, yeah, that Sean guy is kind of a jackass, no?
Right? Thank God he's gone.
Thank God he's not here anymore.
Man, he's such a dick.
Yeah, those
he calls
Broncos,
out everybody.
Oh, that's how he should lead. Yeah, 100% should lead off that meeting. I bet he gets he doesn't get suspended at all. They'll suspend Sean because he'll tell him all the secrets. He'll give him all the goods.
We'll double back, and we found some stuff about Sean we didn't like.
Based on our interview with Alvin Kamara, we're going to suspend Sean Payton for 3 games.
Everyone's like, what?
We can't tell you why. We just know he deserves it.
And you know what? I think Saints will be like, okay, we're okay with that now.
Yeah, why not? It doesn't affect them. Anyway, good stuff. Good stuff. All right. This has gone off the rails a little bit, but we're going to come back. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. We're going to dive into the pretty extensive interview that Jimmy Graham did over the weekend. It was this first time talking to the media since coming back to New Orleans. He had a lot of fascinating things to say. So we're going to dive into that. Then we're going to close out with some content about Mike Thomas, routes, and then we're going to pick our kind of top 3 standouts for the start of training camp. Keep it locked on Inside Black and Gold. And we're back. Another segment of this here episode of Inside Black and Gold. We are coming to you after the first full padded practice, almost real football. It was fun, so we got a lot to talk about. But this segment, we're going to go kind of back a little bit. We're going to backtrack to Saturday when Jimmy Graham talked to the media for the first time. Talked for 17 minutes, which I don't know if that sounds like a lot to you, but it is for anybody. Definitely. And it is an insane amount of time for Jimmy Graham to talk to the media, a guy who I don't know if he's talked to the media for 17 minutes aggregate over the last 4 years. So we're going to get into it. I'm Jeff Nowak. You can follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. He's Steve Geller. You can follow him at Steve Geller WWL. You can follow the show Inside Black and Gold on Twitter at Saints_pod. Give us a rating. Give us a review. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you'd like to hear. We got a lot of ground to cover between now and the end of training camp. So, we're looking for ideas, and we will execute them poorly if you give them to us.
We can guarantee that.
So, Steve, let's kind of backtrack. So, what is your initial impression of Jimmy Graham as he returns to the city? As he's kind of a new look. He looks slimmer. I don't know how they're going to use him, but I feel like red zone is likely. But what has your kind of read been on that situation to this point?
Everything with Jimmy has obviously been a huge positive. The fans are excited. I know even a lot of players are excited to see him back here. The thing is, he was definitely immature in the locker room for the media, at least when we were around. You mentioned him talking 17 minutes. To me, yeah, that's unheralded for him. I just remember going back in the day, you'd be in the locker room and all of a sudden you'd see Jimmy open up the training room door and kind of peek his head out and smile at everybody and be like, I'm not coming in there, and then leave kind of thing. But I know Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis addressed that as in their opening that press conference. Were saying that he's a more mature player nowadays, and hopefully that means more access to the media, because it's not like he's not a good speaker. I just felt like he might have been an intimidated young player that didn't know what to say at the time, kind of thing. I don't know. But as far as a player nowadays, I don't think that he's going to be this huge, massive target or guy that's going to, get a ton of catches for this team. But I do think he is still a huge, valuable weapon inside the red zone because of the fact he's big and physical and knows how to use it. I mean, we've seen that in the past, and that hasn't gone away from him. And with a quarterback like Derek Carr, there's a lot of hope in the fact that I think a 5-6 touchdown season really isn't out of the question.
He can still dunk too.
We don't want to see any penalties for that, though.
That was not.
It feels amazing to be back home. Just really driving up to this facility on Monday brought back beyond beautiful moments for me. Not only here in this building, but here in the city. I became a man in this city, and it meant everything to me to play for this city. And so to come back here and to be able to, get all those amazing memories, amazing wins, amazing people, amazing fans is truly special. And, it made me pretty emotional, Monday, Tuesday, just to be able to be back here. And then obviously to be able to put my jersey back on, it's words can't describe, what it feels like to be gone, for that long, from something that you love, from the people that you love. So, I'm fired up.
Yeah. And, it's really kind of an emotional story when you think about it. Like, Jimmy Graham kind of grew up abandoned, right? Like, and obviously he was adopted, but he grew up in a group home, and it was, there was a lot of stories about how it was not a good situation. And so he kind of treated New Orleans like his home. Like, he talked about Drew Brees like his older brother, and then he wakes up one morning and he's traded.
That's
and
tough, right?
it really is. It kind of hits you right in the feels when you think about it, because it's like he kind of felt abandoned by the team that he had made a home with, and it's not that unlike what happened to him as a child. And I think that's part of the reason he wanted to come back so badly. And he talked about how he had told his agent, he'd come back and play for the Saints, otherwise that's it. I'm not going and playing for another team. There had been teams that had called him up, playoff caliber teams, and he was not interested. Last year he spent the year off. He says he feels as good as he ever has. He focused on his body last year. I think everyone's going to say that. Who knows? Like, I'm pretty sure Kiko Alonso would have said that last year. But I think that a year off, kind of to kind of lick the wounds and kind of get better and deal with any aches and pains that have been lingering, especially for a 36-year-old dude, is helpful. He said he's been trying to come home for a long time. I don't know how hard he has been trying in terms of he probably could have re-signed here a few years ago. He ended up going to the Packers. Last year they had talks, he and Mickey, maybe they couldn't agree on a deal, whatever. He's back now. And I've said this a few times. I don't think he comes back without at least some reasonable idea of what his role would be and that there would be a role for him. And I said this on WWL this morning. I think it's more like there is a question as to whether he makes the roster, but he's not a camp body in the sense that they're bringing in somebody just to compete with the idea that the other probably going to get cut. I think he has a chance to be a camp body, but only if he shows that physically he can't hack it anymore. And from what I have seen over the last few days, that's not the case. He can physically do it. So I fully expect him to make this roster, barring any injuries, barring anything unfortunate. But I think it's a really cool story, and we'll get into more about the trade. But I think that's what the point that he really wanted to drive home is like, this is where he grew up. Like, this is where he kind of became a man, as he put it.
Yeah.
And coming back to be that leader that Drew was to him, to the younger guys, like the Juwan Johnson, who calls him Master Splinter. I think that's really cool for him, and it's something he wanted to do, and we should all feel fortunate that we get to see it play out.
Yeah, and I think the first day in pads, we really saw how excited Jimmy is to be back. Unfortunately, poor Troy Pride, though.
Was that Troy Pride? I didn't write it down. Because I had it in my notes that he just bull rushed a dude. And he didn't have to. Like, he chose to do that.
Yes.
He just caught a pass into the flat, turned upfield, and just lowered his shoulder and took out Troy Pride, which, I saw it happen right in front of me, but I didn't clock the number because he was plastered on the ground. I drew a pretty big cheer from the fans. Every time he catches a ball, the fans cheer. And I appreciated that because, again, this is a 36-year-old. And I think that's probably just like a moment where it's like, okay, I'm going to see what happens here. and he did it. That's a good note. I appreciate you brought that up.
No, it was like exactly what you said. He's like, you know what? It's first day in pads.
Yeah.
Sorry, guy. I'm going to make an example out of you right now because I can.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. Like, you're wrong place, wrong time, buddy. Here's all full 6'7", 260 in your chest. And we talked to Troy Pride yesterday. No, not yesterday. Saturday. And I actually, Troy Pride has had a really good camp. I enjoyed talking to him. So so I covered high school sports in South Carolina when he was at Greer in South Carolina, and Brian Edwards was in Conway. And I was asking him about if he ever played against Brian in high school. I didn't think he did. And he said no, because Brian wussed out and didn't play in the Shrine Bowl. And he was bummed because he was like one of the top DBs and Brian was a top wide receiver and they didn't get the match. Anyway, but yeah, Troy Pride, he's still got pride, but not maybe got dinged a little bit on that play. But yeah, so let's get into the trade. Now, there's a few elements of this trade that I think are worth talking about. The first being he did not see it coming whatsoever. And that's from what he said,
Yeah.
There are a lot of storylines that went around in terms of that. But one thing that I didn't realize, but now makes a lot of sense, he stopped talking to the media after being sent out to Seattle. And I don't know if maybe Marshawn Lynch not talking to the media played a factor here. It seems like an odd coincidence that both those guys ended up on the same roster and neither is willing to talk to the media and neither of them influenced each other, but whatever. He just stopped talking to the media and you get fined for that. Like, if you outright refuse to talk to the media. And, just on a whim, I looked in YouTube and I searched Jimmy Graham interview, and you'll find clips of him doing interviews. They're from the Saints days. They're from 8-9 years ago. I did find one interview that he did after a post-game interview when he was with the Seahawks, and he was wearing full pads and jersey. And you don't see guys wearing full pads and jerseys in post-game interviews. So they must have just grabbed him off the field and said, Jimmy, get out there. I think he caught a touchdown. He had a big game. So it was like, what do you got to lose here? Like, just do a freaking interview. Like, I've never, in the time I've spent covering this Saints team, I have not seen a player do a post-game interview in pads. So it's just kind of like, I think that's just like, he's if he had time to change out of his pads, he would have run away because he just did not want to do interviews. And and it was because he just didn't feel like he felt abandoned. He was not in a good headspace and he had nothing positive to say. So he focused on football. And, I think it's like, it really is sad. You think back to how good he was and how important of a piece he was to those teams. And just suddenly he's shipped out to Seattle and doesn't know any better.
I totally had forgotten about the part where you had mentioned, obviously his childhood and, being adopted kind of thing. And yeah, that it's just brutal to be brought in, to your new home, this Saints squad here. And he even talked about, I remember something to the fact that he never wanted to play with another quarterback besides Drew Brees kind of thing. And obviously that didn't turn out to be. But yeah, for whatever reason, like I mentioned before, even hearing, the fact of him not doing interviews in Seattle, but he's never been a big talk to the media guy. So that might have just helped add to that. Like after the trade was like, well, I've definitely got nothing good to say anymore. So I'm shutting it down completely.
I think you're 100% right. Like he was already a non-talkative person. He didn't want to do the media anyway. And that was just an excuse to not do it. But he was risking fines. He did not care. And so here's his full kind of answer about the trade, because I think it's worth listening to. It's a longer clip, but I just figured we could just listen to the whole thing.
It's a business. This league's a business, and I woke up to the part of the business that hurts. So for me it was very difficult, but I didn't know I was going to a Super Bowl contender, and I know I had the opportunity to to possibly make a run at a ring, and that's always been a goal for me. But definitely moving across the country was a little different, but at first, it was very difficult because because my connection with Drew, as an older brother, and all the people in this building, it was a family, so for me, a guy that doesn't have a lot of family, it was definitely a difficult time for me.
Was it something you possibly saw coming, or was it total shock when you got that?
Yeah, it was total shock for me. I never imagined being anywhere else, so definitely a shock.
Jimmy said he did. How long did it take you to come to that realization that was just part of the business, and that you were able to get past some of those initial feelings?
Well, it took me a little bit for sure. I've always been an emotional player. I think I've always kind of wore my heart on my sleeve, and after leaving here, I basically stopped doing interviews, and that was kind of one of the reasons. I didn't really have a lot to say that was positive. At the time it really hurt, and it was really difficult for me. So, I just focused on, at the time, just being a good teammate and committing to the place I was at, into that scheme, and to learning to fit into a team that was great. A team that had the Legion of Boom, Marshawn Lynch, unbelievable, explosive offense. Russell Wilson, and had a great title room. So for me it was really just trying to focus on that. But that's kind of one of the bigger reasons, I guess, I started getting in trouble with the media a little bit. I genuinely didn't know what to say, and I just didn't want to be bothered with it, honestly.
There you go.
Yeah, and I just think it's really, that was a fascinating answer. And again, he's never talked about that trade before, which is crazy. People also, I also hear like, well, the Saints won that trade, and maybe they did. Max Unger was very good. They blew the draft pick on Stephon Anthony, but Max Unger, I think, was good enough that you kind of look at it and say, okay, would they have been better off with Jimmy Graham? Jimmy did not have any more ascendant seasons, right? But he did have a 10 touchdown season in Seattle. He had one season where he had 65 catches, 923 yards, and 6 touchdowns, which for a tight end, that's a pretty good season, right? So it's not like he was a scrub. And you also look at what the Saints went through. I mean, we can pretend that they were great. They were not. They had 3, 7, and 9 seasons after trading Jimmy Graham, right? 2015, 2016, and 2017.
Yeah, and to
So-
me, you talk about too, post Jimmy Graham. What I think of right away is Kobe
Kobe
Fleener
Fleener.
being brought in. Oh man, that was terrible.
Right, they've been trying to find a tight end ever since Jimmy Graham. I think people like to gripe about Jared Cook. Jared Cook is the best tight end they've had since Jimmy Graham. And Jared Cook had one solid season, and then a kind of the ball security is what people remember. But I mean,
Ben Watson was solid, but he
Ben
wasn't
Watson
anything.
was okay.
Right. He was a
He
good
was 38.
all-around guy.
He was if the Saints get out of Jimmy Graham, what they get out of Ben Watson, they will be thrilled.
Yes,
But I mean, that's like
agreed.
40 catches, 300 yards, 2-3 touchdowns, right? But either way, like the idea that they won that trade because Max Unger was good, I don't know, because the team didn't do well. And you can blame it on the defense, and you should blame it on the defense. But either way, they didn't get better for trading Jimmy Graham. They had a chance, and they blew the draft pick. Yeah, but the one more thing that I want to get into, and Bobby brought this up, and I'm glad he did, because I think that it was worth clearing the air on it, is the whole like wanting to be paid as a wide receiver thing. And this is, I'm not even going to summarize. This is what he had to say about it.
I think that also kind of pissed me off because, that's not really what I wanted, I just didn't want to be franchised. Yeah. It's hard to play in the middle of the field in this league, and back then at that franchise tag, it made no sense. I was like, well, I just want a longer deal. And that's what that was about. It was about fighting that and, making sure that, I could take care of myself in case something crazy happened. So that's all that was about.
Jimmy, were you saying that the narrative after the franchise tag issue pissed you off because people were saying that's why you got traded, or were you saying just
just the issue in general, it kind of got blown out of proportion. Everybody's like, he wants to be a risk, and it has nothing to do with that. I just didn't want to be a franchise, at the time, I played my rookie deal out, and I never asked for $1, and a lot of guys had taken early deals and I never did. I just played with it, and so I expected that, but that's all history now. That was a long time ago and a few contracts ago. So, I'm just personally happy to be back. Happy to have this opportunity to work with, such an unbelievable room, a diverse room. It's awesome to really sit down and talk with Carr. Just realize what type of man he is, what type of person he is, and then to see how much talent's on this team. To see how many players that this team has, and the team that's been built here is unbelievable. So much talent on both sides of the ball, and just excited to see it, and spread some of my knowledge and some of the things that I've learned throughout my career.
So Jimmy's great with the media.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You would never know any better if you only listened to that interview, and it's 17 minutes long. You're like, wow, well, this guy loves to talk.
Very heartfelt. Yeah, you felt it was personal, and there was no player speak, kind of, run-of-the-mill yearbook answers he was given. It was definitely from the heart, and all this stuff, hearing it again, really, it was an emotional journey for this guy. You feel that.
It was a lot of stuff that you can tell he has been wanting to say for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
And he had to come back here to do it, because why would you ask him all these questions in Seattle and in Green Bay and in Chicago? But the franchise tag stuff sound familiar, right? Do you not see like everything happening now with the running backs and then understand that that's what the battle Jimmy Graham was fighting 8 years ago? You want to know what his stats were, his average stats for the 3 years before they tried to franchise?
Hit me.
He averaged 85 catches for 1,000 yards, for 1,028 yards, and double-digit touchdowns, like 12.5 touchdowns a season. Those were his averages per season for 3 consecutive years. And then the Saints would not give him a multi-year deal. Yeah, that would annoy me too. And I think like the idea is like, well, why, if you're going to franchise me, at least do it as a wide receiver. That's the part that people really latched onto. And so that's what people remember. But like you said, that pisses them off because that's not what it was about. it was about the same thing that running backs are bad about right now, which is like, you're not going to, I mean, I'm risking life and limb every time I go over the middle of the field and someone dives at my legs because that's the only way they can tackle me. And you're not even willing to give me a multi-year deal after all of this, after I played out my rookie deal and did not once come to you and say, you better freaking pay me. I can understand it. And again, the way he looked at this team was it's a family, right? And then all of a sudden they weren't going to pay him. And so he stood up for that, and then he got traded. And you know, I it's really hard to disagree with Jimmy in this, you know, because I think we've gotten more player forward over the last decade in pro football, and for good reasons. And I think if that happened today, say if it was like Travis Kelce, and you were just like, yeah, of course they're going to pay him. Anyway, I think that's a really interesting point to all this.
Yeah, and I definitely was one of those too that what stuck into my brain was definitely that Jimmy Graham wants to be paid like a wide receiver, not a tight end. It wasn't that he didn't want the franchise tag.
Yeah, and I don't think that ever got talked about. It was all just like, wow, he just wants more money. Anyway, so let's move forward a little bit to just, okay, what are the expectations now, right? So one thing he talked about was that he's gone from about 285 to about 260. And he called himself a meathead when he was here before. He worked out with John a lot, and he was just eating weights and getting heavy and getting big. And he talked to Tony Gonzalez, a guy who obviously played for a long time at tight end and is one of the best to ever do it. And on his advice, he slimmed down. And he, in his year off, he said he was biking hundreds of miles a week. He's in the best cardio shape of his life. And that's all by design. He's still going to be 6'7". He's still 260, but taking some of that poundage off and really working on his body has allowed him to be in really good shape this late in his career. And so I think that's a factor, right? When you're trying to figure out, okay, can he still get this done? Yes, but we have to be careful. We have to be cognizant of who he is and where he is at in his career as we do it. I think one of the things that will fascinate me is if they just kind of work a Taysom Hill set here, where they kind of are in tandem for some reps, and you get Taysom Hill, a guy who forces the defense to come up and play up at the line, and then Jimmy Graham, a 6'7" guy who can get downfield and catch a jump ball. I think that could work, you know? And I don't know if that works the same with Juwan Johnson. I think you do want to give him rest when you can. I don't think if it works the same with Foster Moreau. Neither of those guys are big. I mean, they're big, but they're not tall. They're not long. So I think that would work. And so I think that's the type of way you need to think about Jimmy Graham in this offense. And the fact that he's been able to come in really good shape, I think that helps.
You know, there was a time that Jimmy Graham and Rob Gronkowski were being mentioned in the same sentence. Obviously, that's, you know, Gronk's gone and Jimmy's on the downslope of his career, but that ability, that tough, being able to go up for a catch, make that physical play and come down with it is something that's still ingrained with him. He's still got the size where he might not be as heavy anymore, but he's still tall enough. And he's got those basketball skills, which we always heard about in every single NFL broadcast, that he used to be a basketball player before coming to, you know, to football. So that's what I just want to see more of. And I think that Derek Carr and, you know, maybe Taysom too can be that guy to get him the ball come the red zone. I'd be very interested to see. You think QB power runs coming, and all of a sudden Taysom lofts one, you know, 50-50 ball up in the end zone for Jimmy Graham to come down with. Who's to say that would work?
I think it would work. If he can throw touchdowns to Adam Troutman, he can throw touchdowns to Jimmy Graham. Yeah, and he says he thinks he could probably dunk until he's 50, and I believe him. He doesn't have to get very high off the ground, and I don't think he can get very high off the ground anymore. But either way, like I said, I'm excited to watch it play out, and I feel like there's a big contingent of Saints fans, maybe not a big contingent, but there is a contingent of Saints fans who want to be right so badly that they're rooting for Jimmy to fail, and for him to be a camp body because they predicted him as a camp body, and to just enjoy the ride, guys. I mean, he could do nothing, and what's the worst case scenario? That he's that he's a good influence on Juwan Johnson and Foster Moreau and these guys and these young players, I mean, great, right? Like that's part of the reason you brought him in. And then if he gives you anything, and we get to watch him score another touchdown in a Saints jersey, fantastic. Anyway, it's fun. Enjoy the ride. This will hopefully be a fun season, and hopefully Jimmy is a big part of that, or at least a part that you're going to talk about by the end of it. That's all I have to say.
There's so many great storylines, obviously, around this team this year. But yeah, the added Jimmy one coming in late now, that's like added lanyap right there. Yeah. And yeah, I agree with you. Have fun with it. We're not saying he's going to be Pro Bowl Jimmy Graham this season, but he could definitely be a factor in the red zone where he's a problem. And I think that's key, especially for a team that had problems getting into the end zone last season.
Look at Gronk in 2020.
Man.
Another guy who came out of retirement.
Yes, there you go.
And did not have his full arsenal, but was still useful, still had a big role on that Bucs team that won a Super Bowl. And I'm not saying the Saints are going to win a Super Bowl because they have Jimmy Graham, but like that's the type of situation that you're in, right? It's not that different. Anyway, this went on for a while. I think we got to the point there, which is stop being mean to Jimmy. Let's all just root for Jimmy and see.
I think for the most part though, like there's a ton of obviously Graham fans happy he's back.
Oh, I say that's why I didn't
out those jerseys out the closet.
The vast majority of Saints fans are very excited, as they should be, and I'm just overreacting to like 7 people on Twitter.
There you go, right? Those cranky folks.
I mean, you go out to Saints camp, and every time he moves 2 feet in any direction, it's like ah. And I love it. I do love the fans when they're out there. It's so much more fun to cover those practices when the fans are out there. But all right, let's close out that segment. We went on deep on Jimmy Graham, and we'll get to talk to him more. Let's close that out. And we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about Mike Thomas and what we've seen from him and why I think his role in this offense is so important for a lot of reasons you might not even realize. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. Follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. He's Steve Geller. Steve Geller, WWL. We're getting ready for one more segment of Inside Black and Gold, and then Steve's going to run away and go on the radio like a good worker bee that he is. But all right, keep it locked on Inside Black and Gold. And we're back. Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. Leave us a review, please. Have you done that yet? If you haven't, do it. Do it.
We got to start getting promos, I think, from all these Saints players to plug us.
Do it. Anyway, okay. So we talked a lot about Jimmy Graham. We talked a lot about the 1v1s and practice and pads and all this. Mike Thomas looks good. Mike Thomas looks
How good does he look?
Mike Thomas looks angry, and I am on board. And one of the things that people like to say about Mike Thomas is that he only runs slants. First of all, that's not true. Look up the data. He runs plenty of other routes, and he runs them well. But you know what he runs better than probably anyone else on the planet?
Oh, what's that?
Slant routes. And this idea that somehow that is an unskilled thing blows my freaking mind. Would you tell Shaq to stop dunking because it seems too easy for him? Would you still tell Steph Curry he shoots too many threes? He should take more difficult mid-range jumpers because it'll make the game more interesting to watch? No. So why are you telling Mike Thomas he shouldn't be running slant routes because no one else can stop it? That's idiotic. Move on.
I think it started because of CD Deuce, which supposedly sparked the fight at practice. He was calling him slant boy. It didn't start
because of CD Deuce, but I believe that CD Deuce knows that it annoys Mike Thomas because Mike hears all that stuff. And then it's like his teammates being a dick to him, so he punches him in the face. Good for him. CJ probably deserved to get punched. Like, that's the thing no one ever talks about is CJ is really good at getting punched and getting the other players thrown out of the game. He deserves to get punched. like they are well within their rights to punch him in any circumstance that is not an NFL game because they're going to get kicked out of it. So it's a great play by him, but he's an antagonist. He knows what he's doing, and he got Mike. And Mike got suspended for a game, right? Like,
it says a little something
and Mike
about.
has a temper. We know that.
I love CD Deuce too, but there says something about him that he's already on his third team.
Yeah. And the Eagles wouldn't even re-sign him after
Right.
leading the NFL in interceptions. Like, maybe there's something going on there, right? But okay. So Mike Thomas has a temper. I think it's what part of what makes him so great is that he's mean. He's mean. I talked to Isaac Yadam about this because I asked him, it's like, have you lined up against Mike yet? And he's like, oh yeah. I was like, is that intimidating? Because he's just gonna try to beat you to the ground. And he was just like, well, no, you gotta match him. You have to go at him with the same level of physicality as he's gonna go at you with. And it's difficult because players like Mike are really good at offensive pass interference, but making it look like it's defensive pass interference, or just getting away with offensive pass interference. That's a part of the game that no one ever talks about, is that if you're really good at it, you can get away with offensive pass interference. You have to know how to do it. Same thing as an offensive lineman. You can hold as long as you hold in the right spot, right? In basketball, it's like if you fall down, you get the foul. So you get really good at falling down creatively, right? It's all playing to the rules without breaking them. And Mike does it as well as anybody. But what he does, again, as better than anyone on the planet, is create immediate separation and then box guys out and make a catch before they can do anything. Mike Thomas got targeted 4 times in practice today. At least 3 of them were on quick slants. One of them, Marshawn managed to break up. And that might happen 1 out of every 10 times. And it takes a player as good as Marshawn, who has the quick reflexes and the ability to get there, to do it. There was a play that Paulson Adebo read perfectly. He got to Mike as he was catching the ball. Mike still managed to secure it and use his momentum and fall forward for about a 5 to 8 yard gain, right? If you're a running back and you could just guarantee 5 to 8 yards, you're in the Hall of freaking Fame. For some reason, people think that because the ball gets thrown to Mike, it's less talented. And it's not, because you are a quarterback's best friend. Every quarterback in the NFL would be better if they had a player who could create instant separation, battle for the catch, and then fall forward because you're big enough to take that hit, right? The only thing that has held Mike Thomas back is his health. And, part of it is being so physical and getting probably doesn't help. But like this, he looks great and he can do what he does best. He's going to make an impact on this offense.
Yeah, come on. Mike Thomas is not that receiver that's going to burn anybody with his speed or like some amazing, agility kind of this play that's got your jaw drop on the ground. But he is going to maybe be in a group of 3-4 guys and come out with the ball kind of thing.
And he just does things that you cannot stop.
Right. What is wrong with not being able to stop that slant?
Well, there's this idea that it's like, oh, it's so easy. There's nothing skilled there. Well, then stop it. Then stop it. Then stop it. Because he caught 149 passes in 2019, and everyone knew what he was going to do.
Exactly.
Why didn't they stop it? Because you can't. And that's what makes it so good. Same reason you can't stop Steph Curry. Same reason you couldn't stop Shaq, right? I don't know why I'm making all these basketball references. You get the idea. The other thing that he does, and I asked James Hurst about this today, is when you can program those short yardage gains, those quick hitting gains, it allows your offensive line so much freedom. And this is what he had to say when I asked him about this.
Is doing his thing, and you can get those quick balls out.
Yeah.
How does that change your mindset as an offensive lineman, knowing like I just got to hold this block for however long?
Yeah, it's a huge help. Obviously, his ability to get open, catch the ball, and even break a tackle and make big plays is huge for us as far as getting momentum going. But also it allows us to call different plays and allows the offensive line to change up their pass sets, give the defensive line a different look instead of us just setting back, and kind of being more passive. It allows us at times to be more aggressive. So I'm very grateful to have a player like that we can drop back and get the ball out in a second. But it's able to give defensive linemen different looks, which is good for offensive linemen.
Yeah. And so like you're affecting the game in ways that is not even like, oh, we needed a 5-yard gain on first down. Okay, we got it. Right. You are allowing your teammates to play off of you. When he's talking about that, it's like, yeah, when you're constantly setting back and you're thinking, okay, we got to protect as long as it takes to get this ball out, you're kind of locking yourself into a box of like the defense knows what you're going to do and they're going to attack it. when you know you're getting the ball out fast, you can do a lot more. You can motion, you can keep the defense off guard. And when they are off guard, it means they're a tick slower. And when you can slow down the pass rush, you can do a lot of other things. And so when you're looking at Mike Thomas, understand that you're not just looking at a guy who runs a lot of slants, who catches a lot of contested catches. You're looking at a guy who impacts your offense in so many ways, and just having him on the field and having him be a threat improves your offense and makes life easier on everybody else. It makes life easier on the quarterback, makes life easier on the running back, it makes life easier on the offensive line. It makes life easier on the receiver on the other side of the field because he's not getting doubled. It affects the game in so many ways. And so that's why I'm so excited to see Mike healthy and to see Mike back. And I'm hopeful that they can keep him healthy, because when Mike is a part of this offense, it is a different offense.
Oh, there's no doubt. It's like no doubt with that too. I just want to know, we always hear the term wrap him up in bubble wrap, save him for the season. I don't know if we're there for that point yet for Mike Thomas, because he's missed so much football. I still think, getting acclimated, obviously, with Derek Carr and the rest of the guys is still key. It's not like, you got, that timing with Drew Brees is still on point, and you can just save Thomas the rest of the way. I don't know if we'll see him much in preseason kind of ball, but I'm just real leery still about getting my hopes up with Thomas, just because of the injury history. And now hopefully the ankle issues as well as the toe issue is something that he's moved on from, because the past couple of seasons has just been miserable.
Yeah, I don't know if he would benefit from being babied. I genuinely don't, because he has been babied the last 2 seasons, and I don't think it's been good for him. I think he's a guy that likes the work, and he's better for the work. And so I think that you do benefit from getting him out there and letting him just go through the full reps. We saw last year, they slow played it, and he still got hurt. And I think you need to I think you're doing a lot of prehab, right? Like, that's a word that I had to define for Bobby Hebert the other day. Because he was like, what the hell does that mean? And it means like preventative maintenance, right? Like, what the issues are going to be, so you're doing work ahead of time. Like, you're dealing with the feet. You're making sure that if there's any aches and pains, you're addressing it before something snaps, right? And hopefully that's something that he's gotten better at, and I'm sure it's something that the Saints are making sure he's focused on. But I don't think like you're shutting him down. You're saying this. I mean, for this, I still don't think you're getting him out there in preseason games, because why would you? But like those joint practices, I expect him to be a full go.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if throughout the season, maybe you do some load maintenance, right? And maybe there's it's like he plays 4 games in a row, and it's like, okay, you're feeling good. Maybe we dial back your snap count for this game. Maybe we give you a week off, even, the same way you would have an off day in baseball. Maybe it's like, yeah, this is probably one we can win without you. I don't know. But either way, I think this slant boy narrative always grinds my gears, because it's like, I think people are trying to project that it's not talented, so it should not be done. And it's just, but it's all coming from a place of we can't stop it. And it's frustrating that we can't stop it, even though we know what's happening.
I think maybe it's just because, Mike's does his production in a way that it's not like a Justin Jefferson. It's not the same kind of receiver.
No, got 149 passes.
He's pretty
good. But everyone knows what he's doing. And it's so obvious. Got 149 passes. He caught like 3. What it takes like good receivers 3 years to get to that total. Not great receivers, but like average NFL receivers who play 17 games. It might take them 3 years to get to that reception total. And he did it in 16 games. Anyway,
right, and like you said, that was a 16-game season. Still wasn't even the 17.
I just get a kick out of it. But all right, let's close this off. Why don't you pick a handful of players who you think have been standouts so far, and let's avoid Mike Thomas and Marshawn Lattimore. We know they've been good. Let's kind of lop that off the top, and we don't want to say Derek Carr either. Let's pick some middle of the pack players that have stood out to you over the first 5 practices. You don't have to get too in depth, but just give me a couple.
Yeah, number one, I think Rashid Shaheed has definitely looked the part of a wide receiver, not just a gadget guy or a return person. Interested to see more of him doing more in the route tree because I think he can really get it all kind of deal. And definitely anxious to see uh, what he's capable of in this offense. We saw a little bit last season and was impressive. Um, on defense, I gotta go with Peyton Turner. Surprisingly, that he stood out early on. Now that the pads are on, though, I do want to see it more. I love the fire and that kind of attitude that he's shown on the field. Now I just want to see it more with the pads on because they definitely need that on the defensive side.
Yeah, I think those are both good picks. Peyton Turner was chasing down Derek Carr today. He got some pressure a couple times. I'm still, we're still kind of in the process of figuring out how he's going to impact the game, but I think he is in line to be the starter across from Cam. Nothing I've seen has kind of made me feel like he's not that. So that's a good thing.
Right?
That's a good thing. Rashid, he caught a bomb today. It was the first time he's connected on one of those. It was from Jake Hayner. He had a chance at one the other day. Isaac Yadam got in and broke it up. But you see him you see him get out and just put the wheels down, and it's like, man, he's so smooth, and
Yeah, it looks
he's so
effortless.
effortless
Yeah,
on the
exactly.
field. And it's like all you got to do is get it out there for him. Like Jameis had a chance at a deep ball on either the first or second day of practice. I think it was the first day, and he underthrew him. And I think it's like you underestimate just how fast he is and just how quickly he gets out there. It's like you just got to sling it. You just got to get it out as far as you can and let him run under it. Like he's that type of fast and he's that type of smooth, and you just got to trust he's going to blow by his guy. And yeah, so I have enjoyed watching that. I haven't seen anyone stand out at linebacker yet. Andrew Dowell's made a couple plays. There's one more. I can't remember.
Wait, linebacker, you thinking, or just in general?
Yeah, I mean, there really hasn't been a ton at linebacker, and that's kind of disappointed me to this point. If I'm looking for kind of a depth defensive back, I think Paulson Debo has looked good. I think Alante Taylor has looked good. I think Troy Pride. And obviously he got just demolished by Jimmy Graham today, but Jimmy ended up on the ground, so I guess he'd get the tackle for that. But I think in terms of a guy who I did not expect to show up and show out this well, he's a guy for me. And Smoke Mondays look good as a blitzer. I haven't really seen much from him as a defender, as a deep back. But yeah, so I'll go with Troy Pride as a defensive back who's caught my eye. And then Lynn Bowden,
for sure.
I think Lynn Bowden has looked good. The issue for Lynn is he has really good chemistry with Jake Hayner, but I don't think that chemistry with the third string quarterback is going to get you on this roster this year. But he has also got upside as a returner, and I don't see a ton of really impressive competition at the wide receiver spot that would make me think he doesn't have a chance at this roster. Traquan had a good day today, but again, I don't think he does enough. And I could see him missing. Yeah, so I think Lynn has looked good for a guy who, had no expectations and seems to have a legitimate role. I like it. I also think Will Lutz has solidified that role to me. I think we can stop talking about Blake Grupe. Will went 8 for 8 on kicks today. I believe he made one from 57 or 59 to close out the day. I mean, we can stop talking about that battle. I still think there's a battle at punter to be talked about, but I think obviously he needs to go out in the preseason and kick. But he looks good. He looked just as good as he did last year. Knock on wood that changes in terms of he looked good last year and he struggled in the season. But I don't see a scenario where he loses that job in camp.
No, I'm right with you there with the kicker situation. I guess with Krupe, you just got to hope another team doesn't notice him and he's there just in case of emergency. Something happens with an injury to Lutz, and you got somebody on the short dial to get back in the building.
Yeah, but there's a lot more to learn. We're less than 2 weeks away from the first preseason game, which is crazy. The Hall of Fame game is on Thursday.
Yes, correct, sir.
Man, it's way too early for football, but We're getting there. We're getting there. I'm excited.
I made it through the entire series. I think it's 8 parts of the quarterback series on Netflix. Fully enjoyed it until that last episode when it was featuring the Chiefs and the Eagles in the Super Bowl, and my childhood favorite Eagles blew that game.
I have not watched it, and I do not plan to.
I think you'd be into that it's pretty interesting.
I watch football all the time. When I'm not working,
you don't want to get
more
football.
I mean, like, how much football do I need in my life? Like, there's other things.
I hear you. I know.
So I don't know. Like even the Hard Knocks stuff. Like, it's just like, gosh, how much of this do I need?
You know what? I typically haven't watched them. Last year I did just because of so many Saints connections with the Lions. Yeah. I'll probably tune in to see stuff with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think I'll be following it religiously.
Yeah. Like, I'll watch games. Like, when I'm not working, I'll watch football games. But I'm not going out of my way to find. I'll watch documentaries, and I guess the quarterback thing is like that. But I prefer like the 30 for 30s, like the old school ones. Like, there was one on Marcus Dupree that I highly recommend.
That was really great.
Stuff like that. Like the Book of Manning is really good. I highly recommend that. Like, that's the type of stuff that I'm looking for. Sports stuff. It's like there's enough. Like, I need to figure out what happened before me. I don't need to get more information about what's going on now.
Right. It's like I got enough to deal with Derek Carr. I don't need to hear the inside outs of Kirk Cousins. Yeah, lifestyle.
I agree.
I will say the really the whole thing to me really humanized these guys, that they're not just these athletes on a pedestal. You see that they go through real struggles at home, off the field kind of thing. And I appreciated that aspect of it. We look at often these guys as superheroes, and they're really just mere mortals, folks.
We just talked about Jimmy Graham for 20 minutes, and I think we kind of got to that point as well. But yes, I agree. And I think, that's something to remember when you talk about people getting franchise tagged. And it's like, wow, why you can't play $11 million a year? Like, yeah, well, your NFL career lasts 5 years, and then you got to figure it out. Anyway, we don't need to get into that. This podcast is over. We don't need a whole other podcast starting up on that subject. But all right, this is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. You can follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. You can follow Steve at Steve Geller. WWL. You can follow the show at Saints_pod. I haven't been great about posting to that Twitter account, but I'll be better. I promise. I'll be better. Yeah. And if you want to check out our latest Saints content, check it out over at WWL.com or on YouTube at WWL Sports. You can listen to Steve on Sports Talk every night, WWL AM 870 FM 105.3, and always free on the Audacy app. Steve, what are you going to talk about tonight?
Getting more into stuff with training camp, going over some of the sound we got from the podium with Bobby, and we'll react to that, obviously. And then me, Bobby, and Mike are about to give our top takes at 5:45 on the Crossfire segment that we just kind of installed, where we're all given our top options. And Bobby's going to end up eating most of the clock, though, on that.
That's what he does. I used to have a game called Crossfire. It was like a board game where you would shoot balls at each other. You know what I'm talking about?
I remember that. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I guess I wasn't alone. I have to go find one of those. But all right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. It's been a lot of fun. We'll be coming at you later in the week with another episode as my dog sneezes.
Bless you.
Really loudly. And there's going to be a lot to learn. If you have any questions, let me know. If you want us to get into any subjects, hit me up. My DMs are open. I love suggestions because it saves me the effort of having to get that hamster turning.
We're not very good thinkers.
Yeah, no, I'll talk. I'll talk your ears off. But when it comes to getting that wheel started, it's tough, and it's just just cobwebs and fun bags of Funyuns and stuff like that in there. And it's not good for anybody. But all right, thanks everyone for listening. Who dat? Go Saints.
We got tons to bring you because fans aren't on practice for a while. So get ready for the next episode, which should be really hot.
Baby. All right. Peace, y'all.